this is a little different from the commentary that I've provided on this show so far, but and please allow me to indulge in a little bit of venting, because this has been a problem that I've been kind of dealing with, grappling with behind the scenes, and it really has to do with the unbelievably stupid daily news cycle and how journalists on a regular basis get played into unwittingly campaigning for Donald Trump. And nothing made that clearer than the news cycle yesterday, which I'm sure is going to bleed into the news cycle today. So look, Donald Trump, for all of his incompetence, is actually incredibly savvy when it comes to campaigning and marketing. And I think that he continues to be underestimated by members of legacy media, members of mainstream journalism. And nothing made that clearer than the news cycle where journalists focused on Trump's statements regarding forcing governors to open places of worship, even if it's premature, even if it's dangerous. And so it just goes along with this playbook that for some reason journalists haven't been privy to yet, even though it's out there, it's obvious. So Trump will say something stupid, outrageous, or controversial that appeals to the worst characteristics of his base. Then the journalists will be baffled by it, angry about it. The hyperventilating will begin, and they'll dedicate the next 24-hour news cycle to the outrageous thing that Donald Trump has said. Then Trump will complain about how the media is being so unfair to him, and that'll take up more of the news cycle. And then, it's just, again, the media advertising the very characteristics of Donald Trump that appeal to his base. He is campaigning right now. Make no mistake about it. So yesterday, Trump decided to do this press conference, and he was incredibly smart in refusing to take any questions following this press conference. Let's take a look at what he had to say, and then I'm going to break it down for you.
Today, I'm identifying houses of worship, churches, synagogue, and mosques as essential places that provide essential services. Some governors have deemed liquor stores and abortion clinics as essential, but have left out churches and other houses of worship. It's not right. So I'm correcting this injustice and calling houses of worship essential. I call upon governors to allow our churches and places of worship to open right now. If there's any question, they're going to have to call me, but they're not going to be successful in that call.
So Donald Trump has this press conference. It's early in the day, and he was smart in refusing to take any questions afterwards, because that ensured that journalists would cover this story. And then later in the day, the story would continue with the White House press briefing, which Kayleigh McEnany had, right? So without fail, here's what happens later in the day. And already you have the media advertising something that is nothing more than red meat to his base, okay? The evangelical vote, absolutely love that. They love the fact that he brought up abortion and liquor stores and how immoral it is to close these places of worship when we have liquor stores open. Now, of course, in a lot of parts in America, liquor stores unfortunately serve as the only place you can go to buy food. They end up serving as, default grocery stores, which is why they're open and considered essential businesses. And we know why abortion clinics also remain open. It's because it's one of the places where women might have to go for essential health care in America. But nonetheless, what Trump did there was campaign. And if you're a smart, savvy journalist, you're going to realize that, and you're not going to feed into it. You're not going to dedicate a 24-hour news cycle to what Trump says, because the fact of the matter is Trump has absolutely no power when it comes to forcing governors to reopen businesses or places of worship. He doesn't have that type of jurisdiction, and I'll get to the details of that in just a minute. But again, without fail, later in the day, Kayleigh McEnany gets asked questions about what type of authority Trump thinks he has in order to force governors to do this. Take a look.
The president said he's going to override the governors. Under what authority would he do that? And to your point, he said several weeks ago, this is all up to the governors.
Well, I think you're posing a hypothetical, and I think we can all hope that we see governors.
Would override the governors.
You're posing a hypothetical, though.
And notice how Kayleigh McEnany didn't have any answers for the incessant questioning regarding Trump's authority. She didn't have any answers because we all know what the truth is. Trump doesn't have that authority. And now we're having a debate about who's more religious, who's more devout. And that's the exact debate that evangelical supporters of Trump's want us to have. And in the meantime, what these journalists are doing is ignoring incredibly important abuses that are happening by the White House. While the White House claims that, oh, well, our religious freedoms are being violated. I grew up religious. I grew up going to Sunday school every single Sunday. And I remember feeling that I don't need to be inside a church to be close to God or to be close to Jesus, right? You can literally pray anywhere. You can pray in a closet. And as long as you are a person of faith and you feel that you have this line of communication to a higher power, then that's all that matters. But all of this nonsense about opening places of worship has nothing to do about violating religious freedoms. This is everything having to do with Trump's reelection campaign. So why are we wasting our time talking about this? Why are they campaigning, again, on behalf of Donald Trump? And by the way, when I talk about the abuses during this pandemic, there was a story that was reported this week by Newsweek. It was a great story, got absolutely no attention. The Trump administration has expanded on the government watch list, and it now includes American citizens with absolutely no probable cause. There's no reasonable suspicion. There's absolutely no indication that any of these people, American citizens on this list, have done anything wrong. And the worst part about it is you won't even be notified that you're being tracked down by the federal government, that they're taking a look at your banking transactions, that they're keeping a close eye on your travel. If you are, let's say, applying for a new job and that job requires you to undergo an extensive background check, the fact that you are on that government watch list will come up in the extensive background check, thus destroying your opportunities in the future and basically screwing with your livelihood. That's a big story. I haven't seen a single journalist ask a question about that. Instead, they waste their time asking Kayleigh freaking McEnany nonsense questions that they can easily have answered by almost anyone. But if you want an expert, go to a legal scholar, go to a constitutional professor, go to someone who actually knows what they're talking about. Don't spend more time like giving air to this nonsense story. And look, I'm not saying all of this because I don't think religion is important. For a lot of Americans, it is important. Faith is what helps them get through difficult times like what we're experiencing today with the pandemic. So this is not to minimize the importance of religion, but it is to reveal what the intentions and the strategy of the Trump administration is. While Trump might seem like he's a complete moron, he is savvy when it comes to campaigning. He is smart when it comes to marketing and messaging, and that's exactly what he's doing now. So how about we focus on the real freedoms that are being violated in America right now, rather than give Trump all of this airtime for nonsense issues that aren't really issues to begin with. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I mean, this is so important, and I for one miss going to mosque myself. But I think that there's no doubt that number one, there is an incentive structure for the press with Trump. He's good for ratings, he's good for revenue, and this is the dynamic going back to the primary of, the major cable networks. Obviously, Fox is kind of propaganda arm of the Republican Party, but CNN, MSNBC, we're so appalled. We can't believe he's saying these things. Let's go watch him say these things. And that some of that dynamic, a lot of that dynamic exists through today. And I really, really, really appreciate that you brought up that Newsweek story. And there's also been, recent additions to the Patriot Act, which, Mitch McConnell muscled through on behalf of Bill Barr, as an example, and about 10 Democrats voted for, that allows the FBI to look at your browsing data as well. And I think this is really, really important because there was this incredible melodrama about Trump. I mean, people actually comparing him literally to Hitler and this sort of stuff, which, again, I think, to a lot of people rightly struck them as, kind of over the top and ridiculous. And at the same time, and we saw these other dynamics even in mainstream media where, like, of course, Trump incites against the press. But the sort of battle between him and Jim Acosta is not these structural erosions that the Trump administration and the Republicans are pushing through with regards to civil liberties. So I think that there's this really toxic dynamic where not only does the media fall for and push all of his tricks that they're going to use to mobilize the base, like this religious reopening thing, but while they're hyperventilating about this stuff, some of which is, important enough. And as you said, you could actually talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about to debunk the obvious lies that the White House is telling. We are not focusing on the areas where there are serious, dangerous threats and erosion to liberties that the Trump administration is seriously pushing, with particularly Bill Barr, who really is a genuinely dangerous character as AG. And, we get into this dynamic where I think there's a little bit of cry wolf with the broader electorate. And, because there's this constant melodrama, but the truth is that this erosion and these threats to liberties are absolutely taking place with, an obscene, corrupt, and totally unaccountable in every way, shape, and form administration.
Yeah, I think that what the media is doing right now with the nonstop outrage is they're causing outrage fatigue. And I feel it, right? Like, I'm almost never outraged anymore. And that's a terrifying thing to experience, because there are all sorts of outrageous moves by the Trump administration that are completely being ignored. And our civil liberties are being scaled back considerably, but there's almost no coverage on that. So how are you going to expect the average American voter to feel angry, frustrated, outraged about what's happening to their privacy and by the way, how are you going to get them to trust your reporting on how the Trump administration is violating your privacy and your civil liberties when every single day it appears that you're outraged by issues that, honestly, when you do a little bit of digging, are non-issues? Again, with this story, Trump cannot unilaterally force governors to open anything in their states. You would need Congress to act, and with Democrats controlling the House, this is just not going to happen, right? So just think about story selection a little more analytically, and don't fall for the same exact tricks that Trump played in the last election cycle and is certainly doing, the same strategy now. It's pathetic. It's sad. And I get what you're saying about the ratings. And it's also really lazy journalism. I mean, I know this firsthand. It's a lot harder to produce a story about civil liberties violations and like really digging deep and doing like legal analysis to have like a thoughtful, opinionated, segment on it than to just play a video of Trump saying something stupid and then talk about how outraged you are. Super easy, but that's super lazy, and it doesn't really provide any value to society. And that's, I think, part of the reason why we're here today.
100%. It also has that social media flattening effect, which, when you look at people's outrage threads, amongst the centrist corporate types, it's either let's completely ignore when Trump says something that is misdirected but appealing and speaks to something real, like when he was ripping into trade agreements, which have been so bad for so many workers. Then it's like, oh, he said something, I don't know. He said the press correspondence dinner was stupid. Everybody thinks the press correspondence dinner is stupid besides the press. Exactly. And then on the third thing, he's, tearing up an arms control treaty with Russia, which maybe we don't even want to lean into that much anyways, because 2/3 of the time we're saying he's a KGB agent. So why would we want to talk about, him breaking up the architecture of global arms control in an enormously dangerous way, and in a way that is, of course, the mainstream in Republican foreign policy. I mean, I saw John Bolton the other day, who these idiots were even cheering him on for a couple of months, praising Trump for pulling out of another arms control treaty. So, it's ridiculous, it's dangerous, and it misses really, really important distinctions we need to make if, again, we actually want to beat Trump. And it's hysterical to keep being in a position where we're Bernie bros, or I'll speak for myself, Bernie bros, who are, want to not only really get rid of Trump, but the causes that led to Trump, and people who have no analytic ability beyond being hysterical about Trump have no analytic ability to beat him.
Yeah, it is pretty incredible. And like the hysteria is, again, advertisement that appeals to Trump's base. It empowers him.